So we're going to watch Shawn Ryan interview Kash Patel. Kash Patel tells the real reason why Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Democrats are allowing illegal immigration. He's going to talk about voter fraud, and he's also going to talk about the two-tier justice system against Donald Trump and the classified documents case. This video should make you absolutely disgusted when you watch it, so let's jump right in.
Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me here in Tennessee. I appreciate it.
It's an honor to have you here, and you're welcome. So, Brad Geary linked us up with the whole debacle that he's going through right now, and so, man, I've just been diving into everything that you're doing, and love what you're putting out, and I'm thankful that you're here. So, thank you for coming.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for giving Brad a big podium. We need to back guys like that and so many others. So it's great to be here, and yeah, happy to go wherever you want to go.
All right. Well, everybody starts off with an introduction here. So, Kash Patel, you served multiple senior roles in government. Most recently is the Chief of Staff to the Department of Defense, Deputy Assistant to the President on National Security Council, and Deputy Director of National Intelligence in the Trump administration. At NSC, you oversaw the execution of several of President Trump's top priorities, including eliminating Al-Qaeda and ISIS senior leadership and safely saving dozens of American hostages. Before joining the NCS, you served as National Security Advisor and Senior Counsel for the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. You previously served as a National Security Prosecutor at the Department of Justice under the Obama administration, where you oversaw the successful prosecution of criminals aligned with Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other terror groups. You served as the DOJ liaison officer to Joint Special Operations Command. I'm guessing that's where you met Geary.
That's right. That's where I learned everything.
Since leaving government service, you have authored critically acclaimed books, most recently Government Gangsters, and authored 2 children's books. You're the founder.
Government Gangsters? Who's the star of the book? Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris? Must be a really, Government Gangsters. I'm sure I know who the stars are.
Founder and president of the Kash Foundation, a 501c3 that raises money for legal defense matters, education programs, tuition assistance, and financial assistance for our active duty military and veterans. You currently sit on the board of Trump Media Technology Group, host of Cash's Corner on Epoch TV, and you are a senior advisor to President Trump. You also serve as the senior fellow for national security and intelligence at the Center for Renewing America. I can breathe again. Quite the resume there. Am I missing anything that?
It's embarrassing to have that read to you. I hate when people do it, but I appreciate all the subjects and places I was able to go in a very unplanned route. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a hell of a journey, to say the least.
It's been a ride.
And what seems to be, what a fast-paced career. Wow. But so I kind of want to break this interview up into a couple of different sections. First, I kind of want to talk about, because you were so deep in intelligence, I'd like to talk about, what you think some of the top threats and or priorities that the U.S. should be looking at from a geopolitical standpoint on a world scale. And then I'd like to transition into what are we facing inside the U.S. We're in some very interesting times. We have been for about the past at least 8-9 years.
Yeah.
And the media cycles just keep getting weirder and weirder. So, to say the least. So I wanna pick your brain on what we're facing here at home, because everybody knows we're facing something.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the deep state, you seem to be one of the most knowledgeable figures out there. So
Yeah, we'll kick it off. I guess you want to start with external Oconus and then work our way back in, or
Yeah, we'll start with external, but first, I have a subscription account over on Patreon. They're our top supporters. They've been here since the beginning. They were super excited when they heard that you were coming on, and we got a whole slew of questions.
All right, let's do it.
But that's one of the things I do is I give them the opportunity to ask each guest a question. So I got two questions for you. This one's from Kevin Stoltz. He wants to know if you're going to be the next attorney general if Trump gets into office.
It's humbling to ever be considered for any government position because, like you, we did the job as a service to the American people. That's what we signed up for. None of the media exposure, any of that stuff we ever cared about. And so for me, I told President Trump, the same thing when he decided he was going to run again. I said, I'm all in to help you win, whatever it takes. I'm your guy. And on November 5th, should he win, hopefully he wins, and he wants to have that conversation, it's up to him. He's the president, he's the commander in chief, and he gets to arrange the deck chairs as he wants. But for him, I'd go back in.
Do you think that's where you would be best utilized?
I don't know. And I mean, that's like an impossible question. I have no idea where that sequencing is going to land. And it also depends on all the other folks that are surrounding the president and the team he goes in with. So, whether it's an intel position or something in defense or whatever, who knows? It's the one thing I've learned about these senior leadership positions, being around so many of them, is you don't have to be the subject matter expert of that institution to run it effectively. You almost don't want to have that leadership there because they're too tied into the everyday operations, and then what they do is they micromanage everything. You need to have someone who is familiar and has operated with it, but also at the same time who's managed a big ship and can understand the most important thing that Trump taught me was execute the mission and then get the hell out of the way for the people who signed up to do the job. And so that's the thing I learned. So if I go...
Aren't Democrats always calling Trump a dictator? Does that sound like dictatorial behavior to you? He lets other people do their job, ask for their input? Doesn't sound like a dictator to me, but hey.
Back, and he wants me back, and wherever he wants me, I'll tell your viewers as soon as he makes that decision, if he does.
Right on. When do people generally find out if they're going to be in the cabinet or on the staff?
The funny thing about my career is I guess I'm in politics, but like I never was, right? And then I got out and people are like, you're in politics. I'm like, well, I've never run for office. I'm never going to run for office. I'm not in the RNC, the DNC, or whatever party, this, that, or the other thing. It's apparatus. But I guess just because of the close positions I've held with the president and continuing to serve, I've learned that whatever or however it was done is not Donald Trump's way. So I think that's what's appealing to him, to the American public about him. And so I don't know when he's going to sack it. Even though I know him as well as I do, and I talk to him all the time, he probably has his cabinet laid out in his mind. He's just not going to tell people. He's going to do what he does, which is continue to ask probably everyone he sees about their opinions, and he might change his decision on it. So
Let's comment on that again. So every person that Trump runs into, he asks them their personal opinion on things. Again, doesn't sound like a dictator to me. Doesn't seem like what the media, liberal media, says about Trump, how he's a dictator and he just takes control and nobody has a say in anything. Kash Patel just said every person he bumps into, he asks them their opinion on things.
the vice president's probably the best example. That came down to the last second, the last day, last wire.
Yeah.
There's a couple of folks in contention, but he made the decision, after hearing everything from everyone.
No kidding. So, I'm just curious, how do you feel about that? There's no time to switch gears in your head,
None.
right?
Yeah.
So you just, hey, we're going to have you for X, Y, and Z, and we're starting yesterday. So, or is there somewhat of a, hey, we're looking at you, to fill this slot and start getting your mind right.
Yeah, there's some leeway for everybody. So what the campaign does, and that's whatever they manage over there, is they send out vetting packages to, I think it was like 8 people for President Trump's vice president candidate. So they knew they were being looked at. They had to submit this massive amount of information. The campaign leadership of the president looks at it, and then they make a decision. So the guys and gals they're on notice for at least a month that this could be your deal. And I don't know the inner workings on the VP thing. That's probably just like anything else. People are lobbying for you. You may be lobbying directly. You may be doing media. You may be on the road with the president. I mean, a lot of these folks were at President Trump's rallies. A lot of them were doing surrogate work for him. So I guess, in my opinion, I think he did it the best way possible. He auditioned them in front of the American public. There was no sleeper candidate. It's not like anyone in the top 3 or 4 or 5 was someone people hadn't heard of. They were all over the country with President Trump. They were doing TV interviews. They were very vocal and very public. And so I think the president was able to say, I have a wide range of opinions coming at me for these folks, and he was able to use that info.
Interesting. Next question is from Paul. I think this is something on everybody's mind. How likely is it that illegal immigrants will become undocumented voters?
It's probably already happening. I mean, whatever you think the number is, it's at least 10 million, if not 15 million, right? And you've seen liberal states go out and say, we're going to house illegal immigrants, we're going to give them IDs, and we're going to help finance whatever needs they might have for their families and themselves. And so you got to ask yourself, what's the point of all it? Like, what are you bringing all these people here for? Putting aside the fact that some of them commit the most atrocious crimes we've seen in modern history. What is the point of that from the Democrats? And it's because, this is the weapon I think they're going to use. They've studied this for a while. They know President Trump, in my opinion, has the best policy, the best agenda. And he's literally a president of people, from Hulk Hogan to Dana White to rock stars to movie stars to everyday Americans, the military, and to people that serve in government. They just love his style of leadership. And so I think the Democrats are smart enough to say, well, we got to figure out a new way to rig the election. They caught us on 51 Intel letter. They caught us on Russiagate. So now I think what you'll see is some of these swing states come in, and that's what people don't realize. It's not the federal government that controls federal elections. It's the state government. Every state applies its own laws. In my home state of Nevada, there's no voter ID. I went to vote, and I broke out my ID, and they go, we don't need that. I'm like, how do you know it's me? Also, not to mention the fact that you sent me 2 mail-in ballots. And so
in this country, you need ID for everything. Literally everything you need an ID for. But only Democrats could come up with this, notion that asking somebody for their ID to vote is racist. See, these psychopaths, they'll let people come across the border that are known terrorists into the country, put everybody's life in danger just so they can win elections. Do you think they care about Lincoln Riley's family? That she was sexually assaulted and murdered? You know how many people died of fentanyl poisoning because of an open border? You know how many people have been sexually assaulted or murdered? And that's also Democrats can retain power and cheat in the elections. So you think Kash Patel is making this story up? So in every swing state, which is blue or red, you have Democrats that are in charge, and they're all declaring, you don't need ID to vote, no big deal. I mean, it's only your probably in the top 2 important constitutional right, your right to vote. And Democrats think it's no big deal. We'll just give it to illegal citizens. And from here on out, we'll rig every election. There will never be another conservative president again. It's disgusting.
I could vote 3 times. And the system is not secure. And say you have 5% of the illegals. And say, let's use a conservative number of 10 million, right? 500,000 people. The last 2 elections were decided by 54,000 votes in 4 states. You don't need a lot.
So let that sink in. If there's 20 million illegals, of a very small percentage of them listen to Democrats who promise them, if you vote for Democrats, we'll give you A, B, and C, healthcare, housing, free this, free that. So even if a small portion of them break the law, which a large portion do, it's impossible for Donald Trump to win the election because he needs the swing. He needs Pennsylvania. If he loses Pennsylvania, he can't win the election. So who's the threat to democracy again? Who's the real threat to democracy? You know, there was a guy around here, they were doing stuff like that. They were telling people, give me your ballot, I'll turn. It's against the law to tell somebody to give me your vote when they were doing the mail-in ballots and give it to them so somebody else can put the vote in for you. It's against the law. That's why I don't say a word to the guy.
That's the scary part.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, at this point, this may be a stupid question, but if you get 2 mail-in ballots and nobody's checking your ID, I mean, is it even illegal to vote more than once these days?
It's supposed to be, but there has never been a process to
Yeah, it's supposed to be, but you know, if it benefits Democrats, no big deal. I mean, just like when you have BLM or Antifa burning down buildings, killing people, burning down businesses, assaulting people. Oh, what happens? The DOJ doesn't prosecute them. But there's Trump supporters who weren't even at January 6th, that weren't even there, that are doing 20 years in the feds right now. So it is a two-tier justice system. Anybody that says it's not a two-tier justice system, you're a liar.
question, the state-by-state electioneering methods and rules and laws. We had the, what was that famous Bush v. Gore, the paper ballot, I forget what you call it, issue, and then it went to the Supreme Court. But that was one state in one election. And so, honestly, I don't know how you get people to enforce those rules, because it's up to the state Secretary of State and the state Attorney General. Are we going to look at it or are we not going to look at it? Well, they're not going to look at it in Michigan or Minnesota. They're not going to look at it in Pennsylvania. They're not going to look at it in Georgia. Georgia's been very public saying, we're not going to look at any of this. And so,
It's wonderful.
if your elected officials aren't going to look at it, what's your...
Where's the FBI? You have officials in Democratic states, governors, senators saying, oh, we're not going to enforce election laws. We're just going to do what we want. We're going to become a banana republic. We're going to act like Venezuela, where we rig elections and jail political opponents. And, the FBI, who's all about justice, equal justice, nowhere to be found. So year after year after year, election fraud will continue. And the only party that's doing it is Democrats.
For alternative.
So there's legitimately nothing stopping somebody in Nevada from just voting and going to the back of the line, and voting and going to the back of the line, and voting and going to the back of the line, is there?
So the one last measure that people have is bringing private suits, civil suits in the states. So for instance, in Nevada, we are bringing multiple lawsuits to purge the voting rolls, right? So people think, I'm not the election expert. I can't talk to you about machines or about whatever, it's not my wheelhouse.
Why do you think Kamala Harris doesn't care if she does any interviews? She's running off the plane with iPods in her ear. Why do you think she doesn't care? None of them campaign. The lady in Arizona, not Carrie Lake, her opponent. You know why they don't care about campaigning? You know why they don't care about doing interviews? Because they plan to cheat, so it doesn't matter. That's why.
But before all of that are ballots. And before all of that is who gets a ballot? Who gets one mailed to you from Carson City for us, right, from Reno? Everybody that's on the voting scrolls. Okay, well, let's take all the dead people off. Let's make sure all the illegals aren't on. So if you eliminate the problem before it even starts by going to state court and federal court, and cleansing the ballot scrolls, then they don't get a ballot to get in line and do it all over and over again. So that's what we're doing there. And there's a couple other states doing that. I know they're doing that in Arizona, Wisconsin.
Oh, go figure.
And probably one or two other states. And
the lady Hobbs in Wisconsin, she literally didn't give one interview when she beat Carrie Lake. She didn't beat Carrie Lake. If you don't think... There's been multiple people arrested for voter fraud in Arizona, and the majority of them are illegals. So this is the Democratic way. If you can't win fairly, lie, steal, cheat, and try to, your opponent, have them jailed, go after their kids, bankrupt them. Who's a threat to democracy again? Because I know it's not Donald Trump.
There's really 5 states at play at the end of the day for this thing. 5 states are going to make this election.
What 5 states?
Pennsylvania.
Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, maybe Georgia. But that's it.
Wow. So is there any headway in Nevada?
Yeah, we're doing it's actually going really well. We're finding people who shouldn't be on the scrolls.
Of course.
And the courts have to say, okay, get these guys off. And so the issue for, again, all these states have different rules. And I think,
So did you catch that? He's saying in Nevada they've already found people on the voting rolls that shouldn't have been there, and the court had to remove them. Go figure.
2 states have early voting that starts 60 to 75 days ahead of November 5th, right? So you got to get in on the action before then. Some states have 30 and 60-day early voting, meaning ballots start going out that early. So you have to clean the scrolls by then. So hopefully some of these initiatives pay off by then. It's paying off in Nevada, and the work that Nevada GOP is doing is pretty incredible on it.
Well, that's good to hear. You know, I want to move in because of all your time and intelligence. I definitely want to talk about some of the external threats from the U.S. Or of the U.S. But since we're talking about courts and legal jargon, and that definitely is your
I
wheelhouse.
used to be, man. I'm a retired lawyer. I never want to do it again.
Well, what I want to talk about is the two-tiered justice system. Everybody talks about it, and I think everybody knows, something's going on, but I'd love to hear you describe what the two-tier justice system is and just go
Yeah.
into some detail about it.
In short, the 2-tier system of justice is the deep state's weapon of choice. And I don't mean just in court. I mean in the administrative state too. In all 3 branches of the federal government and in applications at the state level. So I used to be, before I started doing everything, I was a public defender for years. I defended the worst humanity had to offer, including terrorists. And the one thing I learned in that job was, our due process and our Constitution applies to everyone, or it doesn't work. And that's exactly what our founding fathers wanted. So I actually went in there and I was like, give me the worst of the worst. It was funny and ironic because all these liberals became public defenders. I became a public defender because I thought going to court was fun and litigating and investigating was cool. And these people would come in and my colleagues would be like, I don't want that case. I don't want that case. I don't want this case. I was like, we don't have a choice. You took this job because you're supposed to defend everybody. So the irony for me started there, but it wouldn't piece together till years later. And so meeting out that singular system of justice for everyone became a big part of my job. And then when I went forward through my career, and when I got to DC and Main Justice and JSOC and all that, I would start seeing people in government, like places like the FBI and senior leadership positions in DOJ, making prosecutorial decisions based on a political election.
Of course.
My first big instance of that was Benghazi. I was the main justice lead prosecutor for Benghazi for a while.
No kidding.
And I remember this meeting with then AG Holder, and we had a deck of like 19 guys we wanted to prosecute. JSOC had them rolled up, and we wanted to get them all. They killed 4 Americans. It's a legit terrorist attack. And the basic general response from the FBI and DOJ leadership was, well, it's only politically convenient to get one guy. And they went and got basically the wrong guy. And then we prosecuted that wrong guy. Not that he wasn't a part of it, he just wasn't like the top tier of guys I would have gone after. And they screwed up the prosecution because they didn't listen to us and they didn't want to use the right evidence. And it was all political decisions.
What do you mean they didn't want to use the right evidence?
They wanted to, because half of that stuff was classified, and they wanted to. I didn't piece this together then.
Yeah, it's classified because Hillary Clinton caused all of it. So, you can kill Americans and they'll let you off the hook because they got to cover up things that Hillary Clinton and Democrats do. So,
Because we didn't have the whole fallout from Benghazi, the hearings, and the congressional review. That would take time to come in. But they wouldn't let us prosecute, I think, 16 of the 19 that I wanted. They didn't want half this evidence.
can you imagine that? 16 terrorists that were involved in killing American citizens that the FBI and DOJ wouldn't let him prosecute? Let that sink in. Let that sink in.
It's declassified. And I was like,
Who
why
is they?
Well, the leadership at DOJ, FBI, and the intel community obviously played a role in that. And so, you know, we were just like, all right, we'll do the best we can. And for example, Katala, Greenbrier River, the guy that first got prosecuted, he is getting out for his participation in Benghazi, where he killed 4 Americans. He'll be out of prison before the next presidential election's done.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Why would we, why?
I mean, I don't mean to laugh at it because it's so atrocious.
You got guys right now doing life for marijuana offenses, and the FBI and the DOJ, a known terrorist who was involved in 4 Americans' deaths, he'll be out before the next presidential election. And Donald Trump is a threat to democracy? Do you think if Donald Trump had his people in charge of the DOJ or the FBI or whoever he puts in charge, do you think that would ever happen? Not in a million years. They'd be in Gitmo for the rest of their life where they belong. But this is what happens when you have weak Democratic leadership who sympathizes with terrorists who kill American citizens.
Because they charge him with the wrong crimes. Nobody at the FBI or DOJ wanted to listen to how to turn intel into evidence, into a public display in a court of law. You know, everybody working on the case thought they were the best at everything. And the decision from the top down is we're only doing this guy. And if you get the prosecution wrong, which
What the fuck are we doing, man?
I don't know, bro.
What are we doing? Why are we even in? What the fuck are we doing?
It was my first kind of foray into it in terms of the two.
Shawn, you know what's going on, Shawn. You have Democratic leadership who put Merrick Garland in charge of the DOJ. Who put him there? Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. You know why? Because they're criminals, just like Merrick Garland. Christopher Wray, who put him there?
Your system of justice. And it wasn't happening outside, right? My first experience with that was public defender land. Now it's internal. Now it's the administrative application at the executive branch level in Washington, D.C. And, you know, then you have Russiagate, then you have all these other things we'll talk about. But the best, I guess, definition of the two-tier system of justice I can come up with for your audience is the classified documents case.
Which one?
Which one? So let's use the 2 presidents, right?
I mean, I'm glad he's going to explain it, but you could just make it real simple. The 2-tier justice system definition is this. There's one set of rules for Donald Trump and his supporters who will go to prison for 100 years if they even said the wrong thing. And then there's a set of rules for Democrats and liberals who can do anything they want, and Kamala Harris will bail them out of jail only to commit more crimes. That's what it is in a nutshell.
President Trump gets his home raided on a bogus WhatsApp warrant, which the FBI leaks to the media. Do you know whose name is in the FBI's WhatsApp warrant for President Trump that was 65% redacted? Trump's name and my name. Then they redacted everything else after my name, which once it finally came out, it was completely meaningless BS. Then they go in there and they stage that photo display, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, look at all this classified materials."
Exactly.
What they don't explain to the American public is he's a president, former president, Presidential Records Act. Bill Clinton did the same thing. Every president performs on the same thing. They can take what they want. That's the law. So you can't be prosecuted for possessing classified documents.
Well, can I add? And I don't know what was in the documents, but I mean, if you take, and I can't remember who I had this discussion with.
Can you imagine that the FBI and the and the media working together with the theatrics? Like, they get all the papers in a room. They take, oh, look at all this. Meanwhile, he's allowed to have it. I go through this in my personal life. So people do all types of theatrics to try to get me. Yeah, it's just, they're absolutely disgusting. The FBI is a joke at this point. The average citizen does mistrust the FBI, and they got no one to blame but Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Christopher Wray, the DOJ, because they're corrupt.
Been Tim Parlatore, but
Yeah.
if you take, I mean, when people say classified documents, taking classified documents wherever, to Mar-a-Lago or Joe Biden's garage or wherever it was, I mean, a lot of those documents, people, they make it sound like it's the nuclear codes, or but what it actually is, at least what it sounds like to me, or what I've been told, is a lot of it is just the daily schedule.
Yeah.
Hey, today you're giving a press conference here, you're doing this here, or you've got lunch with so-and-so, you got a couple of meetings, and then that day's over and that is no longer classified because it's already happened. But obviously you can't get the president's schedule out before it happens because, am I correct in saying that some of these documents that they're saying are classified are that type of...
You're correct, but my point is, under the law, it doesn't matter if you have the nuclear codes.
Exactly.
Presidential Records Act. And Bill Clinton took, literally, recordings of a classified conversation, and he took them when he left the presidency, and he put them in his sock drawer. It's called the Clinton sock drawer case. No bullshit.
Hillary and Bill? Corrupt? Criminals? Offing people? No, who would have thought? Come on. Not the lovely Clinton family. You know, only about 60 people associated with them all died of mysterious causes. Read the book.
Bullshit. They went to federal court, the government, and the federal court adjudicated that President Clinton, as a president, has the Presidential Records Act. He can take what he wants. The court never even found out what was on the recording. It's that strong. And that's the law. So then why does this DOJ come in and say, well, it doesn't kind of apply to Trump? And then you interview Joe Biden, and he was never president.
Well, let me answer that real quick because Merrick Garland is a weasel and he's a communist. You know, you ever notice all the communist weasels, what they look like? They're just so weak looking. They hide behind their position of power and they scamper like cockroaches when the light gets put on them. Like Christopher Wray, like Merrick Garland right now, like Joe Biden, all hiding in the basement somewhere, right?
Had 4 different locations of 20 years of classified information. Delaware, his offices in Washington, D.C., and 2 other locations as Beach House and somewhere else. But their excuse to not prosecute Joe Biden was, well, basically he's too inept, he's too feeble-minded, so we're not going to prosecute them. That's not, I've never heard that.
That's legitimately why they didn't prosecute.
That's what the special counsel
The report said. Come on, Sean, you should know that.
General Garland, and Garland came out and literally said, well, we don't think Joe Biden meant to do it. And I was like, what?
You know what's funny? Joe Biden was mad at the person that wrote that report. Joe Biden paid that person and was the one that put that person in position to write the report. And that person wrote in the report that Joe Biden, he's a meaningless, harmless old man whose mind is basically lost. So then in the same breath, you'll have Kamala Harris come out and say, oh, he's perfectly fine to run for president. This is the quickest, sharpest Joe Biden I've ever seen. And, you know, every Democrat on the planet, there's nothing wrong with Joe. He's a young whippersnapper. Meanwhile, a person that he paid to write a report said that his brain was mush. Oh, don't worry about it.
What? I was like, we're back to the Clinton case, the Clinton server case, right? It's like when Comey created this new legal fiction. No reasonable prosecutor, first of all, it's not the FBI's job to ever make a prosecutorial decision. But no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. I was in the National Security Division at the time. I was doing the discovery for Benghazi where we found her freaking email. And then they took that investigation away from us. And then it became the Clinton investigation.
Of course it
right?
did.
That
Of
everybody
course.
knows about. I was like, who is this guy talking about? And then I didn't think it would happen, but it did. Came back full circle with the Biden administration, or the Biden prosecution of classified docs. And they let the guy off the hook. And they just said, doesn't matter. So we'll prosecute a guy who has a legal justification to have those documents because we don't care, it's Trump. And we won't prosecute the sitting president because you've made up a new legal standard that applies to exonerate him and to not even charge him. That is the 2-tier system of justice on steroids. And now you're talking about the 2 guys who are running against, now they're not, but 2 guys who are then running against each other for the presidency of the United States.
It's absolutely disgusting. That's what it is. Democrats, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, they think this is a third world country where they're just going to, you know, imprison their political opponents, bankrupt them, go after their kids, go after their family, go after anybody that supports them. And if you can't see that that's what's going on, then there's something wrong with you. And if you think that that's equal justice, or you laugh, or you think it's funny what they're doing to Trump, I can only pray to God that you're next and you go through it.
Where else is this happening?
Man, everywhere. Unfortunately, so we saw it every day on people who are indigent and charged with serious offenses, who were treated differently than folks who were, high-level private sector individuals. I mean, if you go to the fraud cases out of Wall Street or whatever, these guys get to go to Club Fed for, a couple of years,
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up with this because I see where this is headed. If you're a conservative, especially a conservative with power, and you even sneeze the wrong way, you're going to Gitmo. And if you're a Democrat that, contributes to their campaign, or you're part of their machine, you could do anything you want, and the DOJ and the FBI will just look the other way. It's absolutely disgusting. Donald Trump is the answer. Donald Trump 2024, or you won't have an America left.